Welcome back to the Review Den, my friends. I've got a bit of a tough one for me here. See, one of my most awestruck moments as a very, very young Review Den was seeing a rolling demo of Wing Commander running on the latest 486 desktops at the mall. Until then, console games were usually simple platforming affairs, while PC games were more stoic and clinical. But suddenly, Origin Systems managed to combine next-level gaming with a never-before-seen cinematic experience. It was exciting, it was dramatic, and it was awesome to grow up during such giant leaps in video games. And anytime a game purports to be a spiritual successor to Wing Commander or similar space combat sims, I immediately stand up and take notice, especially since the genre has become very niche in modern times. Starlight Inception was advertised as just that in its original April 2012 Kickstarter, a logical follow-up to Wing Commander, X-Wing, and Free Space, the godfathers of space combat sims. Those are some pretty massive shoes to fill, but there must have been enough gamers as thirsty as I am for this stuff, as the campaign reached $150,000, and the fruit it bore was this. Starlight Inception is a space combat game by Escape Hatch Entertainment attempting to mimic those PC games of yesteryear. You launch with your wing in order to fight for the United Star Force against the non-aligned nations who launched a surprise attack against 5 Earth cities, kicking off World War IV.
This is USF Independence. We're reading massive explosions on the Earth's surface.
You will have to contend with enemy fighter wings, capital ships, mines, and even planet-side forces in some of the genuinely cooler parts of the game. In between missions, you'll get cutscenes and dialogue dumps forwarding the story, then proceed to briefing for the next mission and repeat. The formula is absolutely there, but in practice it falls far short in every single way. It's readily apparent this is a very mediocre looking game, but it's the various bugs, glitches, poor design choices, as well as a laughably short length that truly put the nail in the coffin. Starting up the game, the intro movies don't even work on the PS3. We're off to a good start here. I'm sitting here looking at a blank screen, listening to the movies. It wasn't until I tried the included VITA version that I actually saw them. Maybe between 2 broken versions of the game we'll get one working one then. Okay. Once you begin the campaign, you are treated to a conversation with a poorly lit character, then are allowed to roam the ship. Yes, as with its predecessors, you can travel through your home ship in Starlight Inception, but there is zero interaction. Games like Wing Commander let you search for fellow pilots and officers to talk with, letting you in on interesting plot details and character development. But in Starlight Inception, the dialogue is forced on you at the beginning of each mission, so there is absolutely no point to wandering around. Not that you could see anything anyway. Once you reach and sit through the current mission briefing, you are brought to the hangar where the next problem presents itself. You purchase ships, weapons, and upgrades with command points, which are rewarded after each mission. But unfortunately, nothing is given a clear explanation. They never tell you that air-to-ground missiles work just as well, actually better, against enemy ships. Those heavy blasters are described as beam weapons? They aren't. The component that increases accuracy never made a difference. And when I say nothing has a clear explanation, I also mean that in the visual sense. The fonts used are not only incredibly small, but they look as if they're rendered at the wrong resolution. It's as if the game was developed without care given to the fact that it would be presented on console, which is probably the case. Once you get to the missions proper, the issues continue. You proceed through waypoints to each encounter, fine. Problem is, the targeting cursor is so jittery it makes it hard to judge where the enemy actually is. But just when you think that will make gunnery a problem, it turns out that most of your shots actually home in on the enemy, making most dogfighting a joke. Targeting selection is sporked as well. The PS3 version's radar display doesn't work, and you have to manually switch between targeting all contacts or closest targets only. It slows down an important part of combat and could easily have been streamlined. Like X-Wing, power management is available, but none of the settings outside of thrust actually seem to make a difference. Your afterburners and shields both hurt your weapon recharge, but boosting power to any of these systems didn't actually seem to work. So if you use your afterburners and have damaged shields, your main weapons will go dry. It can easily create a feedback loop of death by zero power. The good news, though, is that the enemy usually doesn't present much of a challenge. Fighters are mostly fodder, and in enclosed spaces, their AI will even get stuck in the scenery. Capital ships go down with almost comical ease, and while this may have been understandable back in the 90s, here it's just wrong. Taking down a carrier in just a few seconds is hard to take seriously. Credit where it's due, however, your wingmen are actually quite effective, and I never saw them really falter except in minefields. In fact, minefields and bases are pretty much the only big threats in the game as they constantly spam missiles at you. As a pro tip, just take shields and air-to-ground missiles and you should be fine.
I promise great prosperity and freedom for all people.
Now, story is where I will give Starlight some props. Despite the mediocre presentation, the developers made a decent effort at a fully fleshed out world. This is not a united Earth fighting off some evil aliens. This is a new world war being fought amongst humanity, just throughout the solar system. Sort of like Starlancer in that sense. After the surprise attack by the non-aligned nations, you and the United Space Force must quickly organize a counterattack before your fleets are overrun. Add in some sudden discoveries about alien technology and you have some genuine sci-fi on your hands. Story beats are presented by crewmates, news broadcasts, and some genuinely enjoyable in-mission chatter.
For a big attack, I always have the squadron catch their breath and look in the direction of Texas where I was born. I call it the Texas Salute. Anyway.
The few missions you're given are at least multifaceted and cool. Your training mission is interrupted by that aforementioned surprise attack. You'll launch to protect an orbital base only to then wind up blasting planetary forces. You'll identify usable salvage from a mothball fleet. You even launch attacks on major planetary bases. These surface assaults are honestly the best part of the game. Most similar games of the era would load an atmospheric mission as its own unique environment or level, but Starlight Inception allows you to travel between outer space and planetside on the fly, which is very cool. When talking about missions, though, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. Starlight Inception contains 10 missions. That's it. Even the original Wing Commander featured a long branching campaign, and that came out on 3.5-inch floppy disks. Look, some games like my last review's Tales from Space About a Blob may be on the short side, but even they have more content than this, and each level can be replayed multiple times to reach sub-goals or achievements. In Starlight Inception, your story is done after 10 missions. Now, they did include a set of tower defense-style missions, possibly to offset the short campaign, but each of these plays exactly like themselves. There's just no way a game this short can justify the price tag. Presentation-wise, this video speaks for itself. Some planetary vistas can look cool, but this is a very mediocre-looking game by any standard. Ships and cockpits look bland and uninspired. Character models are stiff and oddly proportioned. Special effects are very basic, and as mentioned before, it's often nearly impossible to see where you're going on the carrier. The music is decent enough, and there's plenty of nice radio chatter, but this is a rare bright spot in a disappointing game. On the VITA, all of the visual problems are exacerbated. Texture resolution is seemingly halved, with many missing effects. The worst part of all, though, would be the performance, which features very prominent slowdown. If it isn't apparent by everything I've said, Starlight Inception is a very mediocre game, and it didn't have to be this way. One of my most satisfying purchases in the past year was the console release of Rebel Galaxy Outlaw, a straight-up send-up of Wing Commander Privateer. And the game is phenomenal. It looks amazing, plays great, has a rockin' soundtrack, has loads of character, and it was made by 5 people. Kickstarters allow for pet projects and fan wishes to come true, but the developers need to be responsible. The project is already paid for, so there's no need for crunch, true, but it also allows for little to no accountability. Anyone working on the honor system knows this, and sadly it seems to happen to these projects all too often. Unlike other channels, I don't like to roast a game. I enjoy finding the bright spots in rare or less polished titles, but to have so many glaring issues combined with an almost laughably short runtime, in my opinion, dooms Starlight Inception to the hangar.
Several USF fleets converge on Earth and Mars to quash this war before it really takes hold.
All pilots report to ready room. Repeat, all pilots report to ready room.
know this hasn't been an easy day, but rest assured, we will prevail.
Return to orbit. We need to assess the damage to the fleet.
Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be back with more reviews soon. If you'd like to help the channel grow, feel free to watch some of my other reviews. But as before, as always, be sure to keep going because you are worth it.